These are 10 country songs that radio doubted, critics attacked, and record labels almost buried. 50 years later, you cannot turn on a truck radio, a wedding playlist, or a TikTok feed without running into them. Here's why they refuse to die. Number 10. Convoy. C.W. McCall, 1975.
On I-10, about a mile out of Shaky Town. Says Pigpen, this here's
A small-town ad executive in Omaha needed a jingle for a local bread company. That's it. That was the whole assignment. Bill Fries wasn't a singer. He wasn't a songwriter. He was a man selling sandwich bread on local TV under a fictional trucker persona named C.W. McCall. And somehow, almost by accident, that side character became more famous than he ever did.
It was the dark of the moon on the 6th of June in a Kenworth pulling love.
The novelty record about a convoy of truckers running from speed traps was supposed to be a joke, a throwaway. Nashville didn't take CB radio trucker songs seriously, and neither did most radio programmers. So why did it become the fastest rising country song to hit #1 on both the country and pop charts at the same time? Because America wasn't just listening to a song. It was living through a moment, a nationwide CB radio craze, a trucker culture boom, a fuel crisis turning truckers into folk heroes. And this advertising man's joke landed in the middle of it at exactly the right second. It inspired a Hollywood movie. It sold over 2 million copies. And it turned an anonymous ad executive into a one-hit wonder whose hit never actually faded.
By the time we got into Tulsa town, we had 85 trucks in all. But there's a
50 years later, it's still the song people shout the trucker call and response to in bars that have never seen a CB radio in their lives. But the next story isn't about a joke that worked. It's about a song almost nobody wanted to release because the label thought it was too much.
Another 10. Well, we rolled up Interstate 44 like a rock.
Number 9. Behind Closed Doors. Charlie Rich, 1973.
She never makes a scene, hanging all over.
By the early 1970s, Charlie Rich had already failed at country music once. He'd bounced between rockabilly, soul, and jazz piano bars for over a decade, watching other singers get the hits he thought he deserved.
And when they turn out the lights, she's...
By the time producer Billy Sherrill brought him a slow, smoky song about a marriage that looked plain in public and passionate behind the front door, Rich was nearly 40, old, by Nashville's standards, to be discovered. There was a problem. The lyrics implied something more intimate than country radio was used to airing in 1973. Programmers hesitated. Some called it too suggestive for daytime airplay. Rich recorded it anyway. And here's what nobody saw coming. The restraint of the song, the suggestion instead of the statement, is exactly what made listeners lean in.
Lord, don't they love to talk?
It went to #1. It won Song of the Year and Male Vocalist of the Year at the CMA Awards. It made Charlie Rich, almost overnight, one of the biggest stars in the genre. He'd spent over a decade being told he didn't fit the format. The format changed for him. But not every comeback story ends in red carpets. The next one nearly didn't happen at all, because the man singing it had already quietly accepted his career was over. Number 8. Rhinestone Cowboy. Glenn Campbell, 1975.
So long, singing the same old.
By the mid-1970s, Glenn Campbell's hit-making years were supposed to be behind him. He'd had his run. Gentle on My Mind, his own variety show, genuine stardom. But the hits had dried up, and in an industry that treats yesterday's star like old news, Campbell was watching younger artists take the spotlight he used to own.
Coming over the phone.
Then he heard a song written by a relatively unknown songwriter, Larry Weiss, about the gap between a performer's glittering image and the exhausting grind underneath it, about chasing a dream down dirty roads with nothing guaranteed at the end. It wasn't written about Campbell, but it might as well have been. Some around him worried it was too personal, too close to admitting his career had stalled. Releasing it felt like a risk. Either it would read as honest, or it would read as desperate. It read as honest.
And I dream of the things I'll do.
Rhinestone Cowboy became the biggest hit of Glen Campbell's career, bigger than anything from his supposed prime. It crossed over to the pop charts. It became his signature song, the one people associate with him even now, decades after his other hits faded from memory. The song about almost losing it all is the reason he never did.
Rhinestone Cowboy.
But Campbell's comeback was personal. The next song on this list wasn't just risky. It set off a controversy that turned a small-town country single into a national argument about morality.
With a Subway token and $1
Number 7. Harper Valley PTA. Jeannie C. Riley, 1968.
Harper Valley Junior High.
Jeannie C. Riley was a 21-year-old secretary in Nashville, not a star, when she walked into a recording booth to cut a song about hypocrisy in small-town America. A single mother publicly shamed by a school board full of people secretly doing far worse behind closed doors. It was sharp, it was satirical, and it made some radio stations deeply uncomfortable.
And as she walked up to the blackboard, I can still...
Several programmers worried the subject matter: public drinking, infidelity, a working mother fighting back against moral gatekeepers was too controversial for daytime airplay in 1968. They aired it anyway, and the response was immediate. Listeners weren't offended. They were thrilled.
Said I'd like to address this meeting of the Harper Valley PTA.
The record sold over 6 million copies. It topped both the country and pop charts simultaneously, a feat almost no country single had managed before. It made Jeannie C. Riley the first woman to win the CMA Award for Single of the Year. It spawned a movie. It later became a syndicated television series. A song the format almost wouldn't touch became one of the best-selling country singles in history.
Since bread you'll find she's had a little nip of gin.
But controversy didn't stop there. The next entry wasn't just uncomfortable for a few radio stations, it split the entire country down the middle.
And drinking and running round with men and going wild.
Number 6. Okie from Muskogee, Merle Haggard, 1969.
We don't let our hair grow long and
In 1969, the country was tearing itself apart over Vietnam, civil rights, and the counterculture movement. Merle Haggard, a man who'd actually served time in San Quentin before becoming a star, wrote a song from the perspective of small-town, working-class Americans who felt mocked by the protest movements dominating the headlines.
holding hands and pitching woo.
It was meant by his own later accounts partly as a joke between him and his band. It did not stay a joke for long. The song instantly became a flashpoint. To some, it was a proud anthem of patriotism and traditional values. To others, it read as a direct shot at the counterculture, and Haggard found himself publicly associated with a side of the culture war he hadn't fully intended to take.
It's where even squares can have a ball.
Here's what nobody saw coming. The backlash didn't sink the song, it supercharged it. Okie from Muskogee became Merle Haggard's signature hit, won him Entertainer of the Year, and turned him into one of the most talked about figures in the genre. Not despite the controversy, but because of it. More than 50 years later, People are still arguing about what the song actually meant.
We're still in style from manly footwear.
That argument is exactly why it's never stopped being played. If these stories are bringing back memories, stick around, because the songs still ahead aren't just famous. They're the ones that defined entire careers, survived tragedy, and in one case, came back from the dead twice.
Still the biggest thrill of all.
Number 5. Coal Miner's Daughter, Loretta Lynn, 1970. Before she was a star, Loretta Lynn was one of 8 children in a coal mining family in rural Kentucky, married at 15, raising kids in poverty before she'd written a single hit song. By 1970, she had hits already. But nothing as personal as the autobiographical song she wrote about that exact childhood. The risk wasn't whether the song was good. The risk was whether audiences wanted unfiltered poverty and hardship from a star instead of Polish. Nashville executives weren't sure a song this plain, this specific, this unglamorous would connect on the radio. It didn't just connect, it became one of the most important records in the history of the genre. A #1 hit, a defining piece of Loretta Lynn's identity, and the title of both her best-selling memoir and the 1980 film adaptation that won Sissy Spacek an Academy Award.
Money made from selling a home.
A song almost too honest for country radio became one of the most honored autobiographical songs in American music. But honesty wasn't the only thing that built a legend. Sometimes, all it took was a dream.
The money's somewhere. Yeah.
Number 4. Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash, 1963.
Love is a burning thing.
By the early 1960s, Johnny Cash's career was unraveling. Years of touring, pills, and exhaustion had pushed him toward collapse, both personally and professionally. The story passed down by those close to him is this. June Carter, along with Merle Kilgore, wrote a song about the consuming, dangerous nature of falling in love. And Cash later claimed the title and the central image came to him in a dream. The decision that almost sank it before release was the arrangement. Cash insisted on mariachi-style horns, a sound almost nobody used in country music at the time. Producers and musicians weren't convinced it would work. It sounded to some ears in the room like a mistake. It became one of the most recognizable arrangements in country music history.
I went down, 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 and the flames went higher.
Ring of Fire hit #1 on the country charts and crossed onto the pop charts, becoming the song most associated with Johnny Cash's voice for the rest of his life. And years later, with the real-life relationship between him and June Carter that the song was actually about. A risky arrangement nobody else wanted became inseparable from the song itself. But not every story about a marriage on record was this gentle.
Ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring.
The next entry on this list became one of the most controversial and best-selling singles by a woman in the format's history.
The ring of fire, the taste.
Number 3. Stand By Your Man, Tammy Wynette, 1968.
To be a woman.
Tammy Wynette was 25 years old, twice divorced, raising kids on her own, when she recorded a song urging women to stand by their men despite their flaws.
Forgive him.
The timing could not have been more combustible. The song landed in the middle of the rising women's liberation movement, and critics accused it of preaching submission at the exact moment American women were publicly rejecting it. Wynette herself would later say the song was misread, that she saw it as being about loyalty and understanding, not subservience.
To understand.
The public argument didn't fade quietly. Decades later, it resurfaced on the national stage when Hillary Clinton, during a 1992 60 Minutes interview, referenced the song directly while distancing herself from the idea that a wife should simply tolerate a husband's wrongdoing, reigniting the entire debate for a new generation. Here's the reversal nobody expected. The controversy never killed the song. It became the best-selling country single by a female artist for nearly 2 decades. A song accused of being out of step with its era became one of the most enduring records in country music. Proof that audiences didn't need to agree with a song to keep playing it for 50 years. But the next entry isn't about controversy at all. It's about a song almost lost to history before the woman meant to sing it died in a plane crash.
Just one man.
Number 2. Crazy. Patsy Cline, 1961.
I'm crazy for feeling.
Willie Nelson wrote it as a demo, mumbling the melody into a tape recorder outside a bar because he had no paper to write it down. When it reached Patsy Cline, the story goes that she resisted recording it. The phrasing felt unnatural to sing, written almost spoken word in a man's cadence that didn't fit a woman's voice.
As you wanted.
She was also recovering from a near-fatal car accident at the time, with cracked ribs that made it physically painful to hold the long, sustained notes the song demanded. The session, by most accounts, was tense. Cline reportedly couldn't get through it the way she wanted to and left frustrated. The final, aching vocal everyone associates with the song was reportedly recorded after she'd left the room, Nelson's original phrasing intact, her voice finally settling into it. It became one of the most successful country crossover singles of its era, and eventually, the most played jukebox song of the 20th century, according to industry tracking organizations.
What in the world did I do?
Then, in March 1963, Patsy Cline died in a plane crash at the age of 30. The song, almost too awkward to record, became her eternal signature. The song that outlived her by more than 6 decades and counting.
And then someday you.
But the final entry on this list didn't just survive 5 decades. It is, right now, in this exact moment, more popular than it has ever been.
Crazy for trying and crazy.
Number 1. Jolene. Dolly Parton, 1973.
Please don't take him just because you can.
The woman in the song was real. Dolly Parton has said she wrote it about an actual red-headed bank teller who flirted with her husband, Carl, during routine visits, turning a small personal jealousy into one of the most famous pleas in American music. A woman begging another woman not to take the man she loves. When it was released in 1973, Jolene hit number 1 on the country charts. That part wasn't the surprise. The surprise is everything that happened after. It never became a major pop hit in the US at the time. By most measures, it should have settled quietly into respected country classic status and stayed there. It didn't. Instead, Jolene kept spreading, covered by the White Stripes, sampled and reimagined across genres, turned into a global phenomenon in the UK and Europe decades after its release, and performed as a duet between Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus
Please don't take him just because you can.
that introduced it to an entirely new generation. Then, in 2024, Beyoncé recorded her own reinterpretation of the song on her album Cowboy Carter, putting a song written about a 1970s bank teller back at the center of a global conversation, 51 years after it was first put to tape. A song that didn't even crack the pop charts when it came out has now outlasted almost every song that did. It isn't just still playing 50 years later, it might be more famous right now than it has ever been.